I thought losing my father's legacy was the worst pain until two dark-suited devils looked at me with the same possessive fire and said, "You must marry both of us." The pen felt like a lead weight in my hand, matching the heavy dread pooling in my stomach. The air in the legal office was thick with the scent of aged leather and the cold, metallic tang of despair. My name is Anna, and I was losing everything. I pressed my forehead against the cool, glossy documents, trying to steady the faint tremor in my fingers, a tremor that betrayed the composed art curator facade I desperately maintained. My father's reckless life had left me with a debt that was less a number and more a guillotine hanging over my head. I was stubborn, yes, but overwhelmingly I was alone. My deepest romantic need, to be seen, truly seen, not just measured for my utility, felt like a childhood fairy tale. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, Jin Woo was staring out of a panoramic window that framed Seoul like a captured jewel. He wasn't looking at the city, he was looking through it. His jaw was perpetually set, a granite monument to his guarded, dangerous persona. As the elder twin, the weight of the high-up We organization rested squarely on his shoulders, crushing any thought of simple human connection. He was a guardian who couldn't be guarded. In his mind, romance was a liability, yet a flicker of loneliness. The constant yearning for a partner strong enough to stand beside him, not behind him, crossed his usually impassive face. He picked up a delicate jade carving of a woman's hand, turning it over once, a rare momentary softness in his eyes, before setting it down with a decisive click. At that exact moment, his younger brother, Woo Jin, stepped off a private elevator into the same tower. Woo Jin was the wildfire to Jin Woo's ice, all coiled, passionate energy barely contained by his custom-tailored suit. His emotional need was more immediate. Validation, purpose, and a fierce, almost guilty desire to protect something untainted by the Syndicate's shadows. As he strode toward Jin Woo's office, he passed a news screen flickering with a charity gala photo. Me, Anna, standing beside a piece of antique porcelain, smiling faintly. Woo Jin stopped. He didn't know who I was, but the light in my eyes, that defiant vulnerability, snagged his attention. A lingering, involuntary gaze. He felt a sudden, proprietary heat in his chest, a premonition that this woman would somehow break his controlled world. He shook it off, but the image remained. Their fates, separate yet perfectly aligned, were now barreling toward the same unsuspecting victim. I signed the last document, sealing my fate. As I stood up, the door swung open, and Jin Woo and Woo Jin stood side by side in the doorway. Two men, identically dressed in charcoal suits, their eyes the same shade of impenetrable obsidian, but their presence, one cold, one burning, hit me like a physical force. My breath hitched. This was no legal formality. This was the executioner. Anna's vulnerability and the twins' possessive power are set to collide. What do you think is the biggest mistake Anna is about to make? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. The shock wasn't just in their appearance. It was in the suffocating power that radiated off both men, making the air crackle. Jin Woo, the one whose gaze was like frozen steel, stepped forward first. "Anna," he said, the name a cold promise. "The contract your father signed doesn't require monetary payment. It requires a merger of families." He gestured to the papers I had just signed, confirming my total legal obligation to the syndicate. I swallowed, trying to find a voice that wasn't trembling. "A merger? I was told I was working off the debt. I'm an art curator, not a—" I couldn't finish the word hostage. Woo Jin, the younger brother who carried the dangerous flicker of a hungry flame, cut me off, his voice deeper, slightly husky, and far more intimate than Jin Woo's. He moved closer, forcing me to tilt my head back, and the close proximity caused my heart to thunder against my ribs. Slow, heavy, terrified beats. I instinctively took in a sharp breath, and the scent of expensive sandalwood and crisp linen, uniquely his, flooded my senses. His presence ignited a deep, protective desire in him, visible only in the sudden tension around his mouth, a guilty desire I shouldn't have been noticing. "We are here to claim the terms," Woo Jin stated, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that felt like a physical touch. "The contract explicitly states the heir will marry into the Choi family." I shook my head, my fear morphing into defensive pride. "And which of you is the heir?" I challenged, my voice a little higher than I intended. Jin Woo's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but something predatory. "That, Jagia," Jin Woo corrected, stepping closer on my other side, effectively trapping me between the two towering figures, "is where the contract offers a unique solution. My brother and I, We are equals. We are halves of the same whole. We are both the rightful heir. The slow pacing of their movements, the deliberate cadence of their voices was calculated to maximize my terror and capture my every reaction. My trembling intensified, no longer just from fear, but from the sudden, terrifying realization of what they were proposing. Wu Jin leaned in, his lips brushing my ear, sending an electric shiver down my spine that betrayed my internal struggle. "We have both seen you before, Anna," he whispered, low and possessive. "We have both been watching, and we have both agreed. The debt is settled this way." He pulled back slightly, his eyes holding a blazing, possessive heat that mirrored the cold intensity in his brother's gaze. The air grew heavy, thick with the unspoken rivalry that existed even in their shared claim to Jinwu. Finished the sentence with chilling finality. "You must marry both of us." The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by my own ragged breathing, knowing that my world, my freedom, my future, and my heart had just been irrevocably seized by two men who saw me as nothing more than a shared acquisition. The initial shock gave way to a cold, hard knot of resistance. My heart might have been hammering against my ribs, but my voice was steady when I finally spoke. "No," I declared, pushing back against the impossible reality they had imposed. "This is coercion. I am not property, and I certainly won't be a shared prize in some twisted power play between brothers." I was afraid, terrified even, but my pride wouldn't allow me to dissolve into tears in front of two men who saw me only as a transaction. They were controlling and ruthless, yet in the brief moment Wu Jin had been close, I'd noticed the faint, lonely etchings around his eyes, suggesting they weren't entirely devoid of human feeling. A flawed, relatable contradiction I didn't want to analyze. Jin Wu simply lifted a dark brow, his posture unmoving. "The contract is ironclad, Anna. Resistance is simply inefficiency." His words were clinical, devoid of personal malice, which somehow made them even crueler. "Your safety now depends on our protection. You will relocate immediately." Wu Jin stepped back, putting distance between us, perhaps sensing the volatility in the air, or perhaps restraining his own impulse. That small act of restraint, though born of calculation, sparked a flicker of curiosity in me, warring with the deep distrust. Why hold back? We were driven to a secluded, high-security penthouse. The silent drive was punctuated by my inner thoughts, a furious debate between my attraction to their potent masculinity and my revulsion at their power. In the back seat, I saw Wu Jin reach across the console, intending to adjust the climate control, and his sleeve briefly brushed my arm. It was a fleeting contact, barely a second, yet the spark was undeniable. I flinched back, not entirely from fear, but from the sudden, unwelcome heat of the connection. Wu Jin's head snapped toward me, his eyes searching mine, a lingering eye contact that lasted a beat too long. "Don't touch me," I demanded, my voice low and brittle, fueled by pride. "I didn't intend to," he countered, his voice equally tight, loaded with implication. He wasn't lying, but his swift defensive response betrayed a recognition of the same spark. Jin Wu, observing us from the front, gave a silent sigh, the only indication of his internal struggle, the responsibility of the Mafia life versus the personal desire he shared with his brother. The only dialogue was the unspoken one. "We shouldn't want this, but we do." The tension was palpable, hanging between us like a physical shield. My initial resistance was strong, but the tiny protective instincts they displayed, the subtle way Jin Wu ordered the driver to take the longer, safer route, or the way Wu Jin silently handed me a bottle of water I hadn't asked for, were small cracks in the wall of my distrust. I knew with a sickening certainty that the fight was just beginning, and my heart was already an unwilling participant. The penthouse was less a home and more a gilded cage, perched impossibly high above the city, designed to keep me in and the world out. My new reality was living under the same roof with two of the most dangerous, infuriating men I had ever met. The circumstances of my captivity now bound us together in an agonizing, forced proximity. They gave me a lavish, separate wing, yet our shared meals and mandatory presence in the main living area ensured our paths constantly collided. One evening, a violent thunderstorm ripped through Seoul, plunging the apartment into a sudden, unsettling darkness. The only light came from the lightning flashes illuminating the vast, rain-streaked windows. I was curled on the massive sofa, trying to appear unaffected by the crashing thunder, when Jin Woo entered the room. He wasn't wearing his suit, just a simple black shirt that made him look less like a crime boss and more like a man stripped bare, still guarded but softer around the edges. He sat in this whole chair across from me, and the shared warmth in the dark space was immediate and intimate. "You're not afraid of thunder," he stated, his voice low enough to sound like he was only speaking to himself. "I'm afraid of a lot of things," I countered, looking out at the chaotic sky, "but not of noise." He didn't respond, just watched the storm. His silence was profound, weighted with meaning, and I found myself studying his profile, the strong line of his throat, the tension in his shoulder. For the first time, I felt a confusing blend of safety and panic. His presence, usually a threat, was now a strange form of unspoken comfort. Moments later, Wu Jin joined us, bringing with him a carafe of warmed suzhonggua, cinnamon punch. He handed a glass to his brother and one to me. Our fingers brushed lightly as I took the glass, and this time, I didn't flinch away. The shared ritual, the shared warmth of the drink and the room, created a deep chemical reaction between the three of us. "This storm will pass," Wu Jin murmured, his eyes lingering on my face. His gaze held a raw vulnerability, a desire for closeness that seemed independent of the Mafia contract. My inner conflict was a raging battle, desire versus fear. I was attracted to the unexpected tenderness in their shared moment and the unspoken understanding that we were all victims of a life we hadn't fully chosen. Yet the fear of their power and their ultimate goal, to share me, was a crushing reality. I knew my heart was starting to bend toward the possibility of a connection, but my mind screamed that loving them meant sacrificing my freedom entirely. As the lightning illuminated the room again, I saw the brothers exchange a look, a quick, loaded glance that spoke of their joint claim, and I remembered exactly who and what they were, solidifying my resolve to resist the dangerous intimacy blooming in the forced proximity. The fragile truce established during the storm was shattered 3 days later. I had spent the afternoon cataloging a private collection of antique Korean pottery, a task Jin Woo had assigned me to keep me occupied. As I worked, I stumbled upon a small, faded photograph tucked into a family ledger. It was a picture of Jin Woo and Woo Jin, perhaps 10 years old, standing beside a much older man, their father, the previous head of the syndicate. The boys looked haunted, their faces set in the same unsmiling expressions they wore now. Beneath the photo, a single cryptic note: "Never forgive the betrayal. The price is paid in blood and silver." As secrets of their trauma surfaced, the atmosphere shifted. That evening, I was in the kitchen preparing tea, a simple domestic act that felt wildly out of place in this cold empire, when Jin Woo entered, looking less guarded than usual. "That collection," he said, his voice flat. "It belonged to our mother. She was not Mafia." He looked away, his eyes distant, allowing a tiny crack in his emotional armor. "She was the betrayal. My father chose power. She tried to escape, and the price was paid." The pain was so raw it hung in the air, forcing us into a shared vulnerability. Before I could process this heartbreaking admission, the sound of splintering glass tore through the penthouse. It wasn't thunder, it was an organized attack. The alarm system shrieked. A rival family had tracked us. Instinct took over. Wu Jin burst in from the corridor, his face a mask of lethal focus, immediately grabbing my arm. Jin Woo was already drawing a silenced weapon from a hidden compartment. The event wasn't the main climax, but it was an immediate test. "Get behind us, Anna," Wu Jin commanded, shoving me toward a fortified safe room concealed behind a bookcase. The brothers moved with a terrifying, synchronized efficiency. They didn't argue about who took which angle, they simply acted as a cohesive unit, their movements born of years of brutal training. I was no longer a prize or a debt. I was an objective they needed to protect, and the urgency of their actions forced them to stand together. As the first sounds of gunfire echoed down the marble hall, Jin Woo glanced back at me, his eyes wide with a fleeting terror that wasn't for himself but for me. That look, that split-second surrender of his guard, deepened our bond more than any whispered word could. This new, immediate danger made the quiet moments we had shared, the shared tea and the vulnerability over the photograph, feel stolen and infinitely more precious. I realized that my survival was now inextricably linked to theirs, and I needed them, terrifyingly, to win. The attack was brutally decisive, ending as swiftly as it began, leaving behind the acrid scent of gunpowder and the shocking silence of relief. I had watched from the safe room, horrified yet strangely mesmerized by the primal, lethal way the brothers defended their territory. And me. When they finally let me out, their suits were torn, and they were breathing hard, their adrenaline still high. We didn't speak of the violence. Instead, we spent the next 24 hours in a state of hyper-awareness, glued to the penthouse. The fragile connection we'd formed deepened under the weight of shared trauma. I found Wu Jin in the gym, meticulously cleaning a superficial cut on his forearm. He looked tired, vulnerable without his typical intensity. You should have left me, I murmured, leaning against the doorframe. You risked everything for a debt settlement. Wu Jin looked up, his movements freezing. He slowly lowered the antiseptic wipe, and his eyes, usually blazing, held a deep, naked longing. Don't ever say that, he said, his voice husky. It's never been about the debt. He stepped toward me, closing the distance we'd maintained for weeks. When they came through that window, all I saw was losing you. A lump formed in my throat. I saw the universal longing for connection in his eyes, the desire to be honest, despite the dangerous world he inhabited. He reached up, his large, rough thumb tracing the curve of my cheekbone, a tender, almost reverent gesture. The air was charged with our shared terror and burgeoning desire. He closed the remaining gap, and his lips met mine. A first kiss that was urgent, possessive, and yet undeniably gentle. It was a confession wrapped in a moment of pure need. Later that evening, after Wu Jin had retreated to handle security cleanup, Jin Wu found me on the balcony, staring at the distant city lights. He didn't approach immediately, giving me space, a sign of respect I hadn't expected from the cold elder brother. He shouldn't have done that, Jin Wu said finally, his voice low. He shouldn't have saved me either, I countered, looking at him. Jin Wu moved to stand beside me, not touching, but the proximity was heavy with feeling. We are bound, Anna, not just by paper, but by this. He motioned between us, indicating the shared fear and the growing, terrifying attraction. You are our peace. We both know it. His confession was not physical, but emotional. A fragile, real connection forming through humor and memory. I knew then that their shared love for me wasn't a competition. It was a desperate, unified need. I feared the danger, but I craved the closeness, finding myself transformed, no longer just a victim, but a woman falling for two complicated men. After this stolen kiss and Jin Woo's honest admission, do you think Anna should trust that the brothers' feelings are genuine, or is this just part of their plan? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. The warmth of the previous night, Wu Jin's tender urgency, Jin Woo's quiet confession, had lulled me into a dangerous sense of safety. I had started to believe the impossible, that their terrifying possessiveness was rooted in genuine, unexpected love. But the Mafia world is built on lies, and my love was built on sand. I was in the study, fetching a book, when I heard low, urgent voices coming from Jin Woo's private office. The door was slightly ajar. I stopped, my hand freezing on the brass handle. She's trusting us now, Jin Woo, I heard Wu Jin say, the familiar husky edge to his voice now sounding cold and unfamiliar. We need to move before she starts asking questions about the amulet of Cheonju. The moment she's officially married to us, the legal right to all her father's assets, including his clandestine acquisitions, transfers immediately. Jin Woo's reply was clinical. Patience, Wu Jin. The legal documents are being processed. Keep her focused on the romance. She cannot know her father used her marriage as the ultimate safeguard for the amulet. It's the only thing that can unite the 5 families, and we need it to secure our rule. The air left my lungs in a silent, agonizing rush. The amulet of Cheonju. My father hadn't left me with just debt. He had left me with a target. And the men who had risked their lives, who had kissed me and confessed their peace, weren't lovers. They were thieves using my heart as bait. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was personal, shattering every moment of intimacy we had shared. The kisses, the protection, the tender silences, all a sophisticated, manipulative performance to secure a priceless artifact that I didn't even know I possessed. My heart didn't just break, it became shrapnel. I retreated silently, my steps muffled by the thick carpet. I didn't confront them. I didn't scream. I simply began to pack, moving with a desperate, terrifying calmness. The emotional cost of lost intimacy was immense. The harsh words and separation were unnecessary because the lie itself was the final weapon. The longing I felt a moment ago curdled into furious disgust. They had played me for a fool. I wrote a single note and left it on the pristine white bedspread. You risked your life for the amulet, not for me. The debt is canceled when I disappear. I found a hidden back entrance that led to the service elevators, and, with a final tearless gasp for air, I slipped out of the gilded cage and vanished into the anonymity of the sprawling, indifferent city. The silence in the penthouse when Jin Woo and Woo Jin finally discovered the note in the empty rooms was more deafening than any gunfire. The cold professionalism they wore fractured, revealing two men paralyzed by a failure far deeper than a business loss. The amulet was a symbol of power, but Anna? She was their unexpected center. Jin Woo stared at the note, his face pale, his perpetually set jaw finally slack with shock. She knows, he articulated, his voice barely yield some details. Rasp. He hadn't just lost the amulet, he had lost the one person who had seen past the Mafia boss and into the lonely man beneath. His pride demanded he retrieve the amulet. His heart demanded he find her. Woo Jin, meanwhile, was already in full, panicked motion. He slammed his fist onto the marble countertop, the sound cracking through the air. He wasn't focused on the artifact, he was focused on the sight of her trembling fingers, or the shared quiet moments. His desperation was palpable, a vulnerable contrast to his usual controlled intensity. It wasn't a lie, not entirely. I fell for her, Jin Woo. The amulet started it, but she was never just the means. They were alone now, reflecting on love and choices. The price of their success had become the loss of their peace. For hours, they utilized every resource, frantically searching the city's hidden networks, but Anna was a ghost. She was a curator. She knew how to disappear into anonymity. Meanwhile, I was holed up in a tiny, dilapidated guest house miles away from the opulence I had briefly inhabited. The room was cold, but the cold of the betrayal was colder still. I sat staring at my own trembling reflection in the dark window. The choice was agonizing. Return and face the inevitable control and the pain of their manipulation, or remain free, but alone and forever hunted. My freedom felt desolate without the unexpected warmth they had offered. I clutched the single item I had allowed myself to take, a small silver calligraphy pen that belonged to Woo Jin. It was a tangible echo of the man who had looked at me with genuine love in the gym. I needed to choose vulnerability over pride, but who was I choosing? The manipulative bosses or the men who had shown me their scars? Woo Jin was the one who broke the deadlock. He walked back into the study where his brother stood, defeated. We stop the search for the amulet, he declared, his decision absolute. We search only for Anna. We go to her and we tell her the truth. We choose her over everything. If she has the amulet, she can keep it, sell it, burn it. We surrender our power to find her. His decision was a protective action, a high-stakes move that signaled his choice of love and redemption over the dynasty. Jin Woo, watching his brother's raw, honest confession, realized he had no other choice either. The game had changed. They had lost the object of power, but they would risk everything to find the object of their hearts. I had made my choice. Clutched in my hand was the silver calligraphy pen, and in my pocket the truth of the amulet's location. I had taken it from the hidden vault before I fled, ensuring they couldn't pursue the power without pursuing me. I had to force the confrontation to see if their love was strong enough to survive the loss of their ambition. I called Jin Woo's number, giving him a location far from the city limits, a deserted historic observatory known for its breathtaking view of the skyline. They were there within the hour. Jin Woo and Woo Jin arrived not in a convoy of black cars, but in a single, unmarked sedan. They approached cautiously, their eyes scanning the area, but their focus immediately snapped to me. There was no anger, no mafia menace, only raw, desperate relief. Anna, we were wrong, Jin Woo began, his voice stripped of its usual authority, revealing the lonely man I had glimpsed only once. The contract was real, the amulet was the motivation, but the love... Woo Jin stepped forward, looking exactly as he did that first day in the lawyer's office. Tall and imposing, yet his intensity was now focused on offering, not demanding. He walked straight up to me, but instead of touching me, he pulled something from his inner jacket pocket, a heavy, intricately carved antique box. This is the amulet of Cheonju, he stated, his eyes pleading for belief. I saw the shock register on their faces, the revelation that I possessed the very thing they had betrayed me for. It's worth your freedom, our dynasty, and everything we have worked for. We don't want it. He dropped the heavy box onto the stone floor with a resounding, definitive clank. It was the symbolic surrender of their power. Jin Woo nodded slowly, moving to stand beside his brother. We choose you, Anna, he confessed, the three words carrying the weight of his entire guarded life. We choose the peace you bring over the power that destroys everything. You can run, you can stay, you can burn the box. But we are done being masters of our world if it means losing you. Tears finally breached my control. The victory wasn't the amulet, it was the love that had forced two dangerous men to choose redemption over power. I walked to the box, picked it up, and walked back to them. I didn't open it, I simply stood between them. I won't be your prize, I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. But I will be your partner. In all things. Woojin reached out and gently cupped my face, his thumb brushing my skin. His eyes, once filled with cold, possessive fire in that lawyer's office, now held only a warm, undeniable devotion. We love you, Anna, he said, and Jinwoo placed his hand on my shoulder, solidifying the unified front, the joint confession of genuine, shared love. We wouldn't be leaving the Mafia life entirely, but we would face it together, three hearts finally finding an unexpected love. Jin Woo and Woo Jin have chosen Anna over their power. What do you think the next great challenge will be for them as a couple in the dangerous world of the Korean Mafia? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional drama.